Hello, hello. Here I am live on YouTube. Give me just a second. Just want to share this link on Facebook, and we are ready to go. I want to talk about dynamic range. Yes, I'm discovering the power of YouTube Live. Yeah, that's just one thing I cannot share my screen. That's just a resistance that I'm having right now. I'll be streaming live on YouTube and also on Instagram. I'll keep an eye on the chat. Here we go, and share it on Facebook as well. Yeah, amazing. Can do this. Yeah, so there we go. What I want to talk to. Welcome, first of all, welcome to the Friday talk, Friday Q&A. I initially called this Free Friday workshop, but yeah, it's so big that we have no time to do a workshop actually. So it makes no sense to do a workshop. This is more a talk, a Friday Q&A. I will have a subject to talk about every Friday. This Friday, today, I want to bring dynamic range. Dynamic range is what I want to talk about today and discuss this a little bit in detail. Before talking about dynamic range, we have to know what an f-stop is. So I would like in the first approach to know what you guys think or what you guys know about an f-stop. What is actually an f-stop? And then understanding the concept of f-stop, we can then talk about the zone system initially introduced by the famous Ansel Adams, the zone system of Ansel Adams. And once we have understood and mastered the concept of f-stop and the zone system, then we can talk about dynamic range. And after that, we will have all the tools to understand how we can use that in our advantage to make a better image and to use that in our photography, to use perception, how to say this correctly, how to engage with our viewers, transmitting the message we want to transmit, connecting emotionally, using perception, knowing this tool, dynamic range. There is, of course, a very significant difference in terms of equipment. When we use cheaper equipment, the quality of the images are not that good technically. I'm not here talking about artistically. I'm just referring the technical aspect of all of it. And my camera, the camera that I've built my portfolio, the Nikon 5100, D5100, it's a camera with the specs 16 megapixel, 14 bit color depth, and 13.6 electrovolt dynamic range. That's electrovolt is an f-stop. 1 electrovolt is one f-stop. So we can say that it has a 13.6 f-stop range. I'm not sure about this value. I do think this value is for an HDR image taken by the camera. So the camera needs actually more than one shot to achieve this dynamic range. I thought that my camera had something like 7 to 8 dynamic stops. F-stop of dynamic range. And the sensor has a long edge of 23.6 millimeters. On the other hand, if we compare with the medium format camera that has a sensor twice as big in the long edge, although it's a 4/3 instead of a 3/2 sensor, so the ratio is a little bit different, but the long edge has double the size. The Hasselblad X1D has 50 megapixel with a sensor with double the size, and 14.8 electrovolts dynamic range. So that's also 14 stops of dynamic range. So looking at these numbers, what we can understand is, there's a big difference. The Hasselblad has 26.2 bit color depth per pixel. So although the dynamic range in terms of f-stops is for both cameras around 14 f-stops, one camera costs 400 and the other one costs 8,000. The big difference is on the amount of information that we can have per pixel, here defined as bit per pixel in the color depth. We know, I've been sharing this, it's in the gray zone there all the information is. So between the full black and the full white, it's where the image, the majority of the information of the image is, unless we are manipulating a silhouette. Even if we are working on low-key images or high-key images, we still need the grays. When I say grays on the black and white spectrum, but we can translate the same thing for the color range, for all color range. So one sensor has double the amount of information as the other, and that's related to size, because also the bigger the sensor is, if we see a pixel the same size, but if we double the target, the sensor, the size of the sensor, we can gather more information, more light, and in a digital form, we can store more information. That's one of the big difference. The other one is in the sensor itself. The sensor itself, the pixel itself, can store more information than the other. And that's why one camera costs 400 and the other costs 8,000. Round numbers, round values, and round reasons. That's the majority. Technically, that's the biggest reason. So the dynamic range is very important. Hey, Jeremy, how are you? When we have a big dynamic range in one image, it means that we have more information. And what does that mean? It means that the transition between the darks and the highlights, or blacks to the whites, anywhere we have a transition, it's softer in terms of image comparing to a lower resolution sensor with a lower dynamic range. If we see a sensor of a smartphone is this size, my camera is a cropped sensor, the long edge is like this, a medium format is double the size, is like this. So the same image, when it's recorded on those three sensors, is going to have a different impact in terms of the final quality, considering that we are capturing exactly the same image, the same light, the same, nothing moves, we just take the same image in three different cameras. And the bigger sensor will have more information in the shadows. So ultimately, what it causes is a perception of 3D, gives us more depth, because it's in the shadows that we have information. When we are seeing a 2D image, a bidimensional image, what gives this perception of depth is the shadows. Unless we are working on a 3D image in space, in a hologram or something, that's another story. But we still need shadows to give shape. And that's technically not only the most important thing about dynamic range, because of course at the end it's going to give us a better feeling when we see the image. We have more information, we have more things to enjoy, let's say like that, instead of having an image with big pixels, with other harsh transition between the darks and the highlights, or vice versa. So unless we are working on a silhouette that is almost full black and full white, we need that information. And the more information we have, the easier it is to transmit depth, the notion of depth, and also the better quality we can have in terms of resolution in a final image, especially if you want to print. I hope that this makes sense to you guys. I would like to talk about this. If you're interested, go into the chat, in the comments, post below. It's really interesting to understand technically what's behind the camera, what makes an image a good image. It's not only about the perception of the viewer. Hello, Sangata, how are you? So it's not only about having the perception of artistically on how the viewer is capturing that image, because it's subjective to the viewer's experience and life. So my life, my experience, my perception, my notion of reality, because spiritually, perception is the illusion that we have of the world. That's our reality. And my reality depends on my life experience and depends on those who I interact with, that will represent my reality. That's my perception of the same reality, of the same world that you are seeing, but your perception is different because your filters are different, because your experience is different. So this is where the technical world and the spiritual and emotional world connect. That's why perception is so important. And understanding this and understanding how light interfere with this is very important, is the most important aspect, in my point of view, in photography or any other media that uses color light to transmit a message. Anywhere there is light, there is color. Anywhere there is color and light, there is shape, and there is something to transmit. In an ad, marketing stuff, photography, video, paint, shape. If you are building something in 3D, if you are manipulating something that has shape and color, because it's light, when light hit that object and then reflects into our eyes, that's when the perception, that's when the message is transmitted. And from our eyes to our brain, or inside our brain, then the image is processed in a different way based on our perceptions. In the middle, there is this little thing that I use called camera in photography. And that's why it's so important to understand how the camera works. What is the dynamic range? How can I use it? So I can build all the pieces and together in the most correct way and build my castle, transmit my information the way I want to transmit. There's no point for me to, as a photographer or as an artist, to just guess what you like and try to go with the wind, because that's like sailing with no specific destination. That's the word. So I do like to create my work based on perception, on emotions, to create, and that allows me also to create on spot something to my client or to myself, whatever I'm working, because nature against me. Well, I would say that nature is never against me, Jeremy. We are part of nature. And what I can understand of that is when we have some resistance. Is that it? Because there is the nature of us, inside of us, and the nature as nature, Earth, Mother Earth, and universe. Can you specify in the chat what nature are you talking about? Like ourselves, or the nature around us, like the trees, or if it's raining or whatever? Because our work is always conditioned by the environment, as we as persons are also conditioned by our personality, that is defined by how we think, that can be influenced by the location where we are living, the people we surround ourselves with. So it's subjective. Again, it's subjective. I would say that the best thing to do is to use whatever we have in our advantage the best we can. I do like when it's raining, for example. The best pictures I have in motorsports, for example, it was raining like hell, and I was getting wet. The equipment was soaked in water. I was afraid that I would lose my equipment because of the rain. So much rain was falling on top of the equipment, and the lens were filled with water drops and stuff. But when the cars passed by, creating that spray behind the car, oh man, those images are the best images I have. And being on the pit lane, raining, and seeing the cars rolling on the water and all the reflections and everything became so bright and sparkling is really, really good. So if it's wind, we have to adapt to the wind, but let's use that as movement in our picture. In terms of that nature, I do like to use in my advantage. Because again, it's perception. When someone photographs taking motorsports, again, as an example, I really don't like to see in magazines like a picture of a car on the corner, high-speed corner, and they photograph the car because they want to make sure that the car is sharp. So they use a high shutter speed, a thousandth of a second or 2,000ths of a second. So it's really quick. So quick that the image is still. The car is frozen. The wheels have no movement. If you photograph an helicopter at that shutter speed of the camera, we capture the helicopter in air with the blades stopped. See, because the shutter speed is so quick when it captures the image, there is no notion of movement. So I like to use low shutter speeds. That's how we should photograph motorsports, generally speaking, at low shutter speeds, and point the camera always to the target to keep the target sharp, and the background with movement. I have to use the lowest shutter speed to create that notion. It's difficult, it's more difficult, but that's again about perception. I want the viewer to perceive and to feel that notion of movement in that image, because the car is going fast, is moving, and I want to transmit the movement. So I use a lower shutter speed to transmit that. So yeah, that's just adapting, because again, perception is the key, and understanding what we want to transmit is the best thing we should do. And so being fluid is something you work with. Yeah, I would say work and live, because sometimes going against the forces can mean two things. First, you're doing good because you are getting stronger and outside of your comfort zone. So it's difficult for you, but still you can feel that you are going with the flow of whatever the universe is giving you. The other point of view is you feel that the universe is giving you something and you are not accepting it and you are going against it because it's against your values. But in fact, it's not against your values, it's against your ego values. We must know when it's the ego self, the regrets, or the higher self talking. Sometimes we don't want to flow because it's our ego talking or our regret talking, and not the truly us that wants to go there and become the better version of ourselves. So I do live and work like that. I try to feel, and I've been training and working on that specifically, try to understand where the gut is leading me. What do I feel? What perception I have of the world? What are the clients telling me? What the people is telling me around? what messages am I receiving from the universe? For example, the last 2 or 3 days, I went to a local coffee shop. I sit somewhere to have my espresso, and moms with babies sit by my side. Every freaking day I go have a coffee in the last couple of days. That means something. I've never photographed babies, but now I'm thinking about photographing babies because those moms are all day in the coffees with the babies. They are not working. They are happy. They seem peaceful. The babies have a beautiful smile. They have a beautiful smile. That's a niche. That's a market that I may have there. So I am now, I started actually today. I wrote that down in my notebook, considering to target my next target campaign to focus on babies and newborns locally, because I've seen in the last days, I've paid attention to what was happening around, and I've seen that every afternoon, moms with babies are having fun in coffee shops, in the library, or other points in town, where I'm going to launch my next marketing campaign, print some flyers, and leave some flyers there, and eventually talk to them one-on-one, offer a promotion, and give my business card. I'm thinking about that. Yeah, that's it. So I think we really have to flow with whatever the universe is giving us. I end up away from my daughter in another country, but I'm still following my passion. Also, photography is just a tool. I don't know, maybe 10 years from now, I'll be using another tool, but my goal, my MO, my modus operandi is always love for gratitude. Having awareness is crucial, perspective on things, and having perspective and awareness are major keys for happiness. Because when you have perspective and awareness about yourself and awareness about the outside world, you let it flow, as you have said, you let it flow, and it's easier for you to do things naturally and perceive the world as it is. So again, perception is there, and it's just, I think it's the biggest message I have to share to the world right now is perception, perception, perception. And like sharing the love, hey, be happy, love yourself, what does that mean? To love is to service, and sometimes people forget that. They think that to love is to let the ego talk. And then when we feel we are not receiving love, we let anger and negative stuff come up, but we forget that love is to serve. For example, love is many things. One of the things in my point of view is to serve. But again, it's perspective and having awareness of what's happening in the relationship, and also having understanding perception, because my perception of a relationship may be different of my partner's, because our reality in the past was different, although in the future we want to go to the same place, But that's not photography. That's on the other side, the spiritual side and the relationship wise. But I do think that this is just the way I am, sharing my messages professionally, and in my personal life, it's the same thing, because I'm the same person. I'm using photography to explain perception, but I use spiritual, higher selves, and even chakras, because color, it's a frequency. The frequency pattern of our thoughts determines the color of whatever we want to realize. So yeah, that's a long conversation. Guys, it was a pleasure to be here with you. Yeah, it's been 25 minutes already, 20 minutes. Oh, cool conversation. Keep asking questions. If you remember anything, post in the chat. It's amazing to do this. And tell me, what is the best platform for you guys to do this? Like, is Instagram? I'm live also on YouTube. The difference is on YouTube, I have a better sound because the microphone is connected to my computer. I share on Facebook. I can use Zoom, the conference software. Yeah, so let me know how would you prefer to see those live calls. But every Friday, even if I have no one seeing, every Friday I'm here, 7 p.m. London time. Oh, guys, it was very, very cool to be here. Share some news about you guys, Jeremy and Sangeeta, tell me how things are going there in India. YouTube, yeah, I'm live on YouTube, but right now I have 0 followers. Maybe I'll have some views. I still do it on YouTube because I keep it there, and people can see it with the right hashtags and stuff like that. I can share, and people can eventually see and comment afterwards, after the live. That's one of my point of views about how good are the lives, because we are live, but the file stays there. On Instagram, I'm not sure, unless I download it. I think after 24, 48 hours, it's gone. But on YouTube, it stays there, and eventually I can upload to Facebook. I would think about it. Yeah, we can do Zoom. We can plan that. Like, we can schedule and do a Zoom. I'd love to do that. We've talked about that before. Yeah. Hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. See you very soon. And yeah, let's chat a little bit more after this.